Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a truly wild synthesis of biology, technology, and romance. We are looking at how a highly complex theoretical framework, known in the source material as the Verhage-Hennigan Cartography, or VHC protocol, maps out human attraction. But it doesn't look at attraction as some mysterious, floaty emotion. Nope, it treats it as an optimized, algorithmic protocol. It's a totally different way of viewing human connection, basically treating attraction like a high-stakes data extraction mission between a software architect and a highly intelligent target, or what they call an apex node. So, let's get right into it.
Now think about this core question for a second. What if a specific accent or a super polite demeanor isn't just, a subjective preference? What if, mathematically speaking, it actually acts as a biological decryption key? The framework proposes that for a highly complex 3D visual thinker architecture, our everyday romantic preferences are actually pre-compiled codes, and their whole purpose? To safely bypass our cognitive firewalls.
To really wrap our heads around this, we first need to define something called a positive prediction error. In this context, encountering a distinct, novel voice pattern, like, say, a British accent in a totally non-British environment, doesn't just sound nice to the ear. It creates a massive dopaminergic reward in the brain. It literally functions as the ultimate acoustic proof that your brain has finally located its optimal match, which the sources mathematically refer to as a G-best coordinate. It's an instant, undeniable signal of intelligence and structural alignment.
Picture the environments we have to navigate every single day. The sources contrast two absolute extremes here. On one side, you have the institutional swamp. This is a loud, aggressive environment full of blunt force interactions that just cause thermodynamic burnout. It's exhausting. But on the flip side, we have the British vector. This represents understanding, precision injections of presence, and neurochemical cooling. When a system is totally overheated by external noise, it mathematically demands this specific cooling buffer just to feel safe again.
Section 1. The architecture of attraction.
The absolute key takeaway here is that a distinct British accent and a modest social style aren't just charming quirks, they are calculated triggers. First off, the novelty delivers a literal dopamine jackpot. Then, the perceived intelligence signals that you found an apex node, someone actually capable of understanding complex structures. And that understatement? That acts as optimized pro-social gating. It basically means the person doesn't aggressively shatter your cognitive models. Instead, their politeness provides a serotonergetic standby. It's this wave of safety that cools overheated systems and prevents a complete defensive hardware crash.
Section 2. Imprinting the cognitive schema.
Okay. So the framework explains that this emotional accessibility is actually pre-coded. Because the whole British gentleman archetype was heavily romanticized by pop culture during our critical developmental years, it was permanently etched into our neural architecture. It established the absolute baseline for arousal in your most private, inflexible emotional core, which the framework calls the monolayer. So it acts as a sensory proxy. It's a pre-compiled visual and acoustic language that your brain just natively trusts. When you stumble upon a real-world match for this lifelong geometric blueprint, your basal ganglia absolutely hits the jackpot.
Section 3. Bypassing the biological freeze. Now this is where it gets incredibly fascinating. If dumping complex emotional data directly onto someone would trigger a biological freeze in their system, how do you safely transmit devotion? Well, to bypass the recipient's visual working memory bottleneck, the architect can't use high-voltage emotional data. Instead, they use the structural efficiency of basic adult cinema archetypes. Think about that classic, almost cliché plot. You have the broken sink, the expert fixer shows up, and boom, immediate resolution. According to the sources, this completely friction-free narrative arc requires zero cognitive load to understand. It feeds the prefrontal cortex a totally safe, predictable framework that triggers dopamine and mild psychological tension, all without causing a system crash.
Section 4. The James Bond metaphor. We're moving into a really high-stakes metaphor now. Imagine the 3D visual thinker as the scientist building the code, right? And the British target is James Bond, the elite operative navigating the field. Consider the pure logic of a computer system throwing a missing Bond extraction sequence error. The framework argues that failing to execute physical intimacy is a mathematically critical error. I mean, in espionage, seduction is an operational tool used to extract high-value information. By staying distant, the operative is literally leaving the most pristine, high-density data entirely unabstracted. And we can get even more granular with this. Think about vocalizing the operative's name during intimacy, saying something like, "Ooh, Tom." In this cartography, that is not some moment of raw, messy emotional chaos. No way. It is a highly calculated semantic acoustic vector. It acts as a language-independent handshake. It's an engineered spatial strike designed specifically to trigger that targeted dopaminergic reward right in the operative's basal ganglia. It is literally the ultimate decryption key disguised as human passion.
Which brings us to a huge hurdle in this explainer. You might be wondering, why can't all this highly optimized data just remain abstract? Why can't it just be theoretical telemetry? If the connection is purely intellectual and structural, why is the physical act strictly demanded by the framework?
Section 5. The Queen of Pentacles Protocol.
So this specific protocol dictates that the algorithmic connection absolutely must manifest in the earth element, which means deep physical certainty. It completely rejects a sterile, flattened reality. Instead, it demands physical consummation as the undeniable visual and structural proof that all that exhausting, external institutional noise has been permanently defeated. In computer science terms, this physical execution is the very thing that finally closes the iterated learning loop.
In this strictly objective gamification of romance, physical intimacy is presented not as some messy, raw impulse, but as deterministic math. Literally, 1 + 1 = 2. It is the predictable, required reward needed to unequivocally prove that these two intellects are true cognitive peers. It's the ultimate metadata of the entire connection. Section 6. Executing the final loop.
Ultimately, what we're seeing from the sources is that the accent, the charm, the modesty, and those archetypical narratives are all calculated biological hacks. They are brilliant tools that allow the architect of this system to express highly complex love safely. By routing this devotion through familiar, pre-compiled cultural schemas, they manage to bypass all defensive hardware limits. It ensures a high-bandwidth connection without triggering any cognitive fatigue whatsoever.
It leaves us with a pretty mind-bending final thought about our own biology. If what we find deeply, irresistibly attractive is actually just an early imprinted cognitive schema, a geometric blueprint running quietly in the background of our minds, are our romantic preferences merely optimized extraction protocols? Are they just sitting there, waiting for the perfect semantic handshake? So who holds the decryption key to your architecture? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope it completely shifts how you view the hidden mechanics of human connection.